Welcome back to another episode of the King's Pulse podcast presented by the King's Herald. My name is Brendan, and today we got Jrue joining the show, aka that local guy. What's up, Jrue? How you doing, man?
You know, could be better. Could be rooting for a team that currently doesn't have an injured star player. But aside from that, no complaints. I mean, the Kings are such a small, very insignificant part of my life. So it's not that big of a deal. But things could be perfect if De'Aaron Fox were not hurt. Aside from that, though, I'm doing okay, man. How about yourself?
About the same. I wish that De'Aaron was playing. I also wish De'Aaron somehow would have been able to take the last shot in Game 4, but
Mm-hmm.
understand that that's probably not the most likely scenario, and am
Uh-huh.
very, very okay with the shot that HB took.
Sure.
Um, the plan wasn't to start with that, but Jrue, I guess we're going to start with that because that's where I took it. Um, you feel good about that shot, right? I feel like there's a lot of people that are like on Harrison about it or on
Mm-hmm.
De'Aaron that maybe shouldn't have gone about it. The way that coach talked about it post game was that the plan was kind of just to go 4-1 flat with De'Aaron, just ISOing.
Yep.
And then I don't think coach expected Harrison to go set that screen. Now, I don't know that coach mentioned that not being part of the plan as a way to like, I don't think coach had an issue with it
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. It makes sense. Steph was the one on HB. Like that could have been communicated to De'Aaron beforehand. I think that play in itself, Harrison going to set a screen makes sense, even if the coaching staff didn't say to do that. And then he gets doubled. HB was close. Like, is there anything that you felt like maybe should have been done differently on that play?
I excuse me. I would trust Fox and Barnes's judgment on that play probably 100 times out of 100. If the communication in the huddle was, and I saw Jay Triano was actually the person who had the clipboard in the huddle prior to them coming out for that last possession. So it probably wasn't anything complex that he drew up, but obviously Jay Triano has a wealth of knowledge and has so many years of experience as an assistant coach in this league. He probably was the guy to go to in that situation to draw something up. He's done very well in that situation before. The Malik game tying 3 against the Clippers in regulation in that crazy game in February comes to mind. You know, he drew that play up. But even if Triano drew something up, I 100% would trust Harrison and De'Aaron's judgment there in that moment. You know, maybe they walked out of the huddle and HB said, "Hey, if Steph is on me, I'm gonna screen for you, whether that's an actual screen or I'm gonna ghost the screen, and then you can get the switch." And I don't think De'Aaron would ever turn down that opportunity to do that, right? I mean, that's an ideal matchup. Teams seem to always hunt Steph. Steph is going to be the guy that's typically going to get. He's typically going to be the guy who's going to get hunted out there. So I'm not mad at that at all. But one of the first things I said to a few of my buddies after the game was, I really wish they just went 1-4 flat, regardless of who was guarding De'Aaron. I just think if you just space the floor all the way out and don't give the Warriors an opportunity to gap De'Aaron up by having everybody just basically just hug the baseline, then you truly do put the ball in the hands of your best player, right? In that situation, I mean, you don't give the Warriors an opportunity to switch. You don't bring any defenders into the vicinity of De'Aaron. Whatever shot he takes in that situation, you live with it, right? Harrison ends up getting the last shot, and I'm with you. I'm 100% okay with the shot that they got. I mean, that's a great basketball play, but that De'Aaron made. He drew a second defender, and even though he did go in the direction of Draymond, some people were saying, well, or at least I saw some people talking about it. They were saying, well, why did he let Steph force him into the direction of Draymond? Well, if he had gone to his right, which is also his non-dominant hand, Andrew Wiggins is there waiting for him, ready to help over on him, right? And I believe he was guarding Keegan Murray. So I just, I mean, you got to tip your cap to the Warriors. They had that defended well. They had the right people in the right places, and I mean, I think it was Keegan Murray after the game who said that he would take Harrison, every single time to take that shot again. And I'm in agreement with Keegan. I don't think you can get a better look than that, and he just happened to miss. So Harrison Barnes is dealing with some double agent allegations right now. People are a lot of Kings fans are saying that he's a Warriors lover, and he's once again proving that his loyalty is actually with the Golden State Warriors. I think I know some of it is in jest, but I know some people are actually thinking that that's a real thing. To those people, I say, please just calm down. Like, that's ridiculous. He got a great look. He just happened to miss. And I thought that the way that he handled himself after the game was really just indicative of the kind of person that HB is. He's just a consummate professional.
And he seems to always be that way. I was kind of surprised he even mentioned 2016. Is it 16?
Yeah, 2016. Yeah.
But I think it's a great point by him. Like, if you can get through all the BS that came with that, he's going to be totally fine after this shot. I don't think that, like, obviously he would have wanted that to go down, and that could have been a really big moment for him. Very storybook, but I don't think that he's like beating himself up for having missed that or anything, or it's going to carry anything over into the next game. No really worries there. I'm with you. Like, I just wish De'Aaron would have got a shot up. And it's, just announced clutch player of the year. It's like you could, I don't know if I'm crazy. Like, if you go up 3-1, the series feels over. It's not. But I think the TNT broadcast on the LA Memphis game earlier tonight said it's something like a 95% chance.
Right.
Now, I don't know the exact accuracy on that number, but it is like the 3-1 team is almost always winning that series. And they had a chance to do that. But I do think it speaks volumes that they were in position to even have that as a possibility in game 4 when, if you're looking at that same statement from the Warriors side, like, they can't lose that game.
Yeah.
And the Kings fought hard throughout that entire time. The end of that fourth quarter was ridiculous. If HB hits that shot, we're talking about this as like a horrible choke job from the Warriors, and also great resilience from the Kings perspective.
Right.
But the choke job from the Warriors would have been horrible. There's part of me going back that De'Aaron apparently had that avulsion fracture after there was, at least this is where it seems like the injury happened. We don't know 100%.
Right.
There will be practice tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get to confirm with him. But it seemed like he kind of got bumped by Poole and then just throws up something after a foul call just for fun, sort of. And Looney still contests it. And Looney comes down, and it doesn't even look like he hits his hand, really.
Yeah.
But he must have just barely hit the edge of Fox's index finger on his dominant hand, his left hand. And now that's an avulsion fracture that he's going to have to deal with. I think they're just going to see how he feels throughout these next couple of days. Knowing what we know about De'Aaron, and I think seeing him play through injuries before, seeing him come back sooner from injuries than what like the typical timeline would be, even just looking at that game, like in that moment, you see him kind of look at his finger. But after that, and he come to find out he had an avulsion fracture in that finger. And there was not another moment in the final 4.5 minutes of game time where he was really like shaking his hand that I saw, or that was noticeable in any sort of way. I think that he's somebody that fights through stuff. I'm sure that if he can, he will. I think it's going to be more so about like, does the staff, the training staff, determine that it is safe for him to do that? Because if you're risking any sort of worsening this in the long term by playing, then the right decision is to not put him out there, even though that this series and potentially winning this could mean so much. Like, you have to value his long-term health. And if that's a factor at all, I think that's what would keep him out. But I think that he tries as long as it's safe enough. The question is now, if he does try, and we don't know how limited he will be, but let's say he is, or actually, let's just start with if De'Aaron can't play. Davion starts, first of all, right?
Yes. And there were already people out there wondering, why not start Davion already and relegate Kevin Huerter to the bench? I don't know about that, but obviously, it's a minority, but it's a vocal minority, very, very vocal minority that wants Davion starting next to Fox because Kevin's been struggling. And I'm not sure I agree with that, but looks like some people are going to get their wish. If Fox doesn't play, I would expect Davion for sure to be the starter. And then that way, Mike Brown doesn't have to really play around with how he staggers his lineups with Davion, because he wants Davion out there as much as possible during Steph minutes, right? Well, If Davion starts, well, then he's going to be in lockstep as far as minutes and rotations go with Steph Curry and with with Steph being an advanced age compared to Davion, and Davion being so young. It's like, dude, play that guy as much as you need to. I really don't think at this stage in the season Davion's even gotten he hasn't had much wear and tear on his body. I know the rigors of an NBA season are real, but Davion in the regular season wasn't playing as many minutes as he is now, right? So in a way that could benefit the team defensively, it's just obviously the trade-off is huge when you lose your star player and your main option on offense.
And his creation off the dribble has been so important. Him being De'Aaron, so important for this team when they're taking away Domas in the way that they are when it comes to Golden State and trying to make him more of a score first guy. And that's a struggle against like Kevon Looney and Draymond Green, two of the better interior defenders in the league. Like I think that everybody's going at Domas, and I want to get to ways that I think that maybe you could try to get him going a little bit more later, but I don't think enough is being said, at least from the Sacramento perspective, about like just how much that says about Kevon Looney. I think Kevon Looney has been freaking amazing this series. I think the Kings are smart at attacking his like deep drop coverage with just more pick and rolls than we've seen more often than not throughout the course of the regular season. Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, that's like the reason those guys are able to get going. But he's been really, really effective against Domas one-on-one. My other question to you before I move fully on to Domas when it comes to if De'Aaron's not there, like Davion steps up and is asked to do a lot. Malik Monk is the other point guard when Davion's not out there. Is that right? And is there anybody else that you consider? Do you like possibly flirt with the idea of PJ Dozier if things aren't working? Like,
well, technically, Matthew Dellavedova is the other point guard when De'Aaron Fox isn't out there, but obviously
his brace looks pretty crazy.
Yeah, the Steph Curry stopper has been has been on the shelf with that finger injury. So that's a shame.
Did you edit the Delly and Jordan picture? Was that your
No,
edit?
that was not me. That was from 2016 when the Cavs won the title.
No, but you put out one recently that instead of Delly, is it Herter?
Oh, I didn't edit that one. So
okay.
I don't know who makes those, but they're amazing.
Gotcha.
And I just I try my best to give people credit whenever I repost memes. I don't know who makes those. So I wish I knew. I'd shout them out. But whoever it is, if you're listening to this, you're doing a fantastic job. Please keep those coming. PJ Dozier. I mean, if you're desperate, then and if you really need some, just even for just a couple of minutes to give Davion a quick breather, right? Or if your lineups have somehow become wonky and you need somebody to come in there and just eat up a couple minutes, then I mean, not ideal, but I think PJ Dozier is a pro, and I think he'll come in and he'll do the best he can. I don't think he'll absolutely just kill the team as far as the productivity on both ends, but that's pretty tough to think about.
Is Malik and Davion enough guard playmaking? Like with how they're defending Domas, taking away his playmaking, like I don't know. And I don't know that PJ Dozier's an answer. I think that he becomes like just the question that I presented to you, I think just becomes a question now. When no way that was in the cards before.
Right.
And again, it's still a long shot, but there's a chance because while Davion's been amazing this series, he's been great on defense. I've liked his passing. He's not doing too much, which I think is one of the bigger things for him defense or offensively in my mind. Yeah. And obviously just hitting threes helps. But he's still not a great passer.
Right.
Like he's not great at setting guys up. Like Malik Monk, when if De'Aaron is not available, and you take Domas out of the equation just because of the way that they are defending him, your next best passer is Malik Monk.
Yeah.
By far. And after that, like you fall pretty far down.
Yeah. That Malik Domas two-man game is still lethal. It kind of seems as if, I know we're about to get to Domas, but it kind of seems like Domas has only been productive out of pick and roll and off of DHOs. If it involves Malik this series, for some reason, they have just unreal chemistry and synergy. That thing's still working really well between the two. I don't know if it's enough playmaking. in all honesty. Davion, I think your point about Davion is a good one. Davion did lead his team in assists the year, his final year at Baylor when they won the national title. He played in a 3-guard lineup with Maceo Teague and with Jared Butler. Those guys kind of shared ball handling duties, but if you had to pick one guy as the quote unquote lead guard, it was Davion. And Davion did a really good job setting guys up in college. I think he was about at 5.5 assists per game when he was at Baylor that last season. Which is a lot for college, by the way. I mean, you got to think about, the skill levels, not as great as the NBA. Not everybody makes every single shot like they do in the pros. 5.5 assists a lot. That is a lot in college, and that's pretty impressive. But Davion, the way that he sets guys up is because of his his quickness, right? And he really makes simple reads, and in college, those are plentiful because if you're Davion Mitchell, you're gonna get a lot of guys to collapse in on you. You'll be able to kick it out, make little dump offs and things like that. It's different in the NBA. His playmaking has taken a step back in the NBA. I think his function as a backup point guard really is somebody who he's going to orchestrate the offense. He'll run your stuff. He'll go out there and he'll get you into your sets. Obviously, the main reason why he's out there is because of his defense. So I think he would be stretched a little thin. And look, people were talking crazy on Davion a couple of months ago. And I think part of the reason why is because when he did have to fill in for De'Aaron, and when he did have to start in place of De'Aaron, whether that was because of injury or when De'Aaron was away for the birth of his child, that's asking a lot of Davion to shoulder that offensive load and also that playmaking load, right? I mean, that's not easy to step into. Those are big shoes you have to fill. And if the Kings have to deal with that again in the playoffs, I'm not sure if they'd be able to survive that, because De'Aaron brings so much to the table beyond his scoring, his ability to break down defenses, the way that he's an automatic paint touch. It wouldn't be the same with Davion. This is not a knock on Davion. These are two completely different players. But yeah, I'd be concerned. I mean, those three guys have played a lot of minutes together. I think this playoffs, Mike will go to that 3-guard lineup, and I think the playmaking that trio brings when they're out there together is great. If it's just Davion and Malik, it's obviously just not quite the same. And then if you have Malik and Davion on the floor together, who are the other three guys going to be? That'll be interesting. It's going to be an interesting thing to monitor, to watch Mike kind of tinker with when it comes to those lineups.
I think what it comes down to is if De'Aaron is either unavailable or limited, which I think the latter is more likely,
mm-hmm.
then you need more out of your second All-Star.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way to start with this conversation is just talk about what we've seen about how Golden State is guarding him. I think that they are very clearly okay with him being a scorer, but not okay with him being a playmaker for his teammates.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he is such an offensive hub that gets everybody involved in a variety of different ways is why the Kings have had, 5 or 6 guys averaging double figures. And he does so much for setting everybody else up. He's just also not naturally somebody that I think wants to be seeking out his own shot. I think he prefers to be setting his teammates up,
mm-hmm.
but you need to be able to do that. And I kind of started earlier by saying, like, Looney deserves a lot of credit. Green deserves a lot of credit for being able to slow down Domas. But what do you think is the balance there? Because while I feel like some people are being too hard on Domas and not giving Looney and Draymond enough credit, I feel like there's a chance that I'm giving Domas too much of a pass, because when it comes down to it, this is your all-star that was shooting 61% from the field throughout the course of the regular season on 19 points. And now he's down to 16 points on 48% from the field. And like, teams are going to take something away, but where do you find that balance on Domas needs to be better versus this is just the reality of the matchup?
First off, I just got to give credit to the Warriors, because it's a brilliant defensive game plan that they decided to go with. And at first, seeing it, in game 1, I was thinking to myself, we'll see. Maybe Domas should be able to find a way to eventually figure this thing out, right? Having Looney and Draymond, Draymond probably would be the more likely. I remember a couple of plays in game 1 where he did press up on Domas a little bit when he had the ball out on the perimeter, get a couple of steals. For the most part, though, both those guys have just been sacking off, right? I think that strategy of having them kind of play free safety or like center field out there is just brilliant stuff. Because part of the reason why the Kings dribble handoff game works is because when Domas dribbles to a side, picks a side to run a DHO game, typically it involves two guys. It's not just one guy. It looks like it because one guy receives the handoff, but a lot of times they'll run that Zoom or Chicago action where it's a pin down into a handoff. Other times you'll see a 45 cut where the guy who's highest on one side will just face cut towards the basket. That gets the defense moving, and then you run a dribble handoff, and the motion that creates can really strain a defense. Putting Looney or Draymond in the paint or just further back from Domas, sagging off of him, that basically just eliminates that 45 cut right there. If you're going to try to run a 45 cut, you're not getting anything with that, right? Like that allows the guy guarding the 45 cut to just hang around a little bit longer, right? And make it more difficult for Domas to actually go get that handoff or to go give that handoff to the guy that he wants to give the handoff to.
And that also leaves Domas with the wide open elbow jumper.
Exactly.
And how often should he shoot that? Like, cleaning the glass has him within 4 to 15 feet, 51% from the field, 14 feet to the 3-point line. Inside of it, though, 45% from the field. Like, he's okay at it, but there's a reason he doesn't take it a lot.
Yeah. I would imagine the sample size is quite small, right?
Yes. Well, 20% of his looks between 4 and 4 feet. That's also probably a decent handful of push shots, but 14 feet to 3-point line, 7% of his attempts.
Yeah. So obviously we know what shot diet that Domantas Sabonis prefers, and they're not giving it to him. Really the only effective way that he's found, like the only effective answer he's found thus far is kind of just eating up that space off the dribble, going straight into Looney's chest or Draymond's chest, just scoring over them or through them. But how often can you count on that being a viable option when the whistles have been kind of all over the place? You don't know what is a foul or what is in the playoffs, quite frankly. And if he gets called for a charge or whatever, I mean, those add up, right? You can't lose Domantas Sabonis. I don't care how much he's struggling. You can't lose him out there because that, like, there goes your offense, basically, if that guy fouls out, right? Like you can't even if they're guarding it well, you can't even process-wise do the same thing that you've been doing, right, all season. So it probably does come down to him taking a few more jumpers, but I'm kind of with you. That's a huge question mark. I mean, if he's not going to hit that many of them, then how viable of an option is that?
To me, it's something that, like, I question of, like, can he come back next year with like a cash mid-range jumper? I don't think it's something that and that's a question. He doesn't need to or anything, but I don't think it's something that just happens in the middle of the series. Like, I think if you're shooting more than like at most like 4 of those a game, that's probably not great. And I also don't think that there's the logic of, oh, we'll just take it a couple times, and if you hit the first 2, then they'll start guarding you. Like, I do not think the Warriors care if you hit the first couple. They're not going to guard you any differently. And you mentioned like the couple times that Domas kind of tries to go to work and take advantage of the big being so far back is a couple dribbles, like you have some downhill momentum. But Domas isn't a guy like, I mean, obviously he's not De'Aaron, but like I think there's even some bigs, maybe more like a Julius Randle type, that can take a couple dribbles and then still maintain that downhill momentum while getting their attempt off. And Domas is more so like trying to get that downhill momentum to maybe just like throw his body into you and then do some old man post work and get a little hook shot, but he's not like maintaining that momentum through his shot attempt, which I think is, in my mind, somewhat part of this. Do you think that like the Warriors ran a lot of that like inverse pick and roll in game 4?
Oh yeah.
Which, for anybody unaware, is just inverse, meaning the big is the ball handler and the guard is the screener. A lot for the Warriors, it was Draymond being the ball handler and Steph being the screener. If De'Aaron's limited, like I'm trying to like theorize ways to get Domas more involved. Maybe run more of those. I think the first 2 plays of game 4, Sacramento ran that. They ran that inverse pick and roll. I think one time it was kind of staggered with De'Aaron and Kevin trying to get Domas going to his left, sort of right around that left block. Like, that's something I would try more.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of what this is going to come down to is like, if De'Aaron is limited, you need to get Domas more involved.
Yeah, I'm the inverted pick and roll is something that I wish the Kings did more of, especially during the regular season, because whenever they do it, especially on an empty side, it worked pretty well. I'm not quite sure if it will work that well even on an empty side against the Warriors, but yeah, I don't think it's a bad way to get him going. If you really want to go old school and you don't want to get that fancy with him having the ball and having to handle it, then you can just run like your typical like your punch sets where it's just like a cross screen or like a flex screen to give him a post touch in the mid post or maybe on the block if you want him to get going offensively early. But I really I don't see why not. Like why not? I'm not saying spam it, but why not give the inverted pick and roll a little bit a little more love out there and see if you can get something going with that. And it's when the Warriors ran it, I'm just like, dude, this is it's good stuff because and they've done a good job with this all series with Domas. And I know we're talking about his offense, but defensively, they have involved them in a lot of actions, especially knowing that he's going to be showing a lot higher because of Steph and Poole and Clay running those every now and then. Yeah, I think it kind of works the same way the other way, right? If you run an inverted pick and roll and you try to involve Looney in that action, and Domas has the ball, and there might be a switch or something like that that you could get on the perimeter. And generally speaking, the Warriors have been switching everything this series. You might get an advantageous look, right? And then it'll be easier for Domas to score. So I say it's worth a try. I mean, at this point, 2-2, you have 4 games in the books. You kind of know maybe those first few games they're kind of feeling each other out, but now it's full go. These two teams know each other. They kind of know what to expect from one another. It's time to start experimenting with some other things and on both offense and defense. And I really don't think that using Domantas Sabonis as a primary ball handler in a lot of actions in the half court is that bad of an idea. I say give it a go.
If they try that, the question becomes, well, first of all, there's going to be times that you're forced to set it pretty low because of the way Looney is guarding him. But if you are a screener or a shooter that is the one setting the screen, then maybe that brings Looney up because typically Looney's responsibility also in those DHOs is or Draymond's is just accounting for whoever is coming off of that. So maybe that forced him to be higher. But I think like we've seen Steph be I think one of his more underrated skills throughout his whole career has been not only his screening ability, but like his willingness to screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could say the same for Clay, but Steph specifically having that skill, I think is really important for that. And then it's like the Kings run a lot of those like split cuts that you were kind of talking about where guys are, I guess, screening, a lot of slipping though. And the question then kind of becomes like, okay, well, who are you screening with? Like, can De'Aaron, do you really want De'Aaron to be screening people when he just had an avulsion fracture in his finger? Like,
right.
Sounds like a pretty bad idea to me. But then who's your answer? Like, Keegan Murray is where they've been hiding Steph. Can Keegan Murray be the screener? I
want to say last game, or maybe it was game 3, they did run that. When the Kings were on ESPN that one time, they were talking to the studio crew about their Pistol 5 action, that Fox and Sabonis run.
Oh yeah.
We do still see that every now and then, but I actually saw a play. And again, I don't remember exactly which game it was, but I do remember it was actually Keegan Murray, who wasn't coming from the ball handler spot. He was coming from, I think, either the opposite short corner or from the opposite block. Came up and he set that screen at the elbow for Domantas Sabonis, and I think the play ended up in a foul. So it was kind of we didn't get a chance to see how that play ended up. But yes, he could. And I to your point, I would imagine that it was Steph Curry that was guarding him. That's why he came up to go set that screen. And I'm not quite sure in that situation it's a switch every single time, because if you're going to switch Steph Curry into Domantas Sabonis every single time, good luck. But you're pointing out Steph's ability and willingness to be a screener. The reason why that's so effective is he's the greatest shooter of all time, right?
Yeah.
You would have to involve a shooter in it. I'm not quite sure I'm sold on Keegan Murray as like this brick wall screener. But Kevin Huerter, Kevin Huerter's been struggling, obviously. Kevin Huerter, my best bud, Kevin Huerter.
He's struggling from 3, but he's still using his gravity. Like,
yeah, that's true.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is definitely me more so ranting at random people rather than yourself. That like Kevin still absolutely has an impact when he's out there. The gravity that he has, the amount of
Mhm.
defensive focus that Golden State has to pay attention to him. I think a lot of times his 3-point numbers are bad, but his 2-point field goal percentage is pretty good, and he finds a way to use that threat to get buckets. I still think that like Kevin's not hitting his threes. Eventually that needs to change,
Mhm.
but like I think it will, and I still think that he makes an impact. Anyways,
Yeah, I
that's my
think
rant. On
that
offense, defense, he
I
could be trash, but
sure. I mean,
sometimes.
I think I mean defense, that's a whole other story with Kevin because I just think he's limited physically. I you typically don't see him miss rotations or anything like that. He's actually done a pretty good job. It's probably the team watching the tape, but he's taken away a few backdoor cuts. The Warriors have a play they call what the fuck. So if you see them doing this, for those of you watching in the stream, if they do this, especially on a sideline out of bounds play, it's a play called what the fuck. It's a back
Is it
screen for
actually
the
called that?
yeah, what the fuck.
Okay.
It's what the fuck play. And it's a back screen for the guy inbounding the ball, and he just comes off that rip screen and they look for a back door. And then on the opposite side, there's a split being run. And
And anybody on audio side, it's just like a can I
yeah, it's
describe this
just
as jazz hands type of
yeah,
thing?
jazz hands basically. They kind of do
Yeah.
this. They do these little jazz hands, and what the fuck is coming. And the Kings have been all over that play this series. They've been really good at just staying on top of that play. Kevin Herter, I think, has taken away 2 of those backdoor cuts. So defensively, like up top, he's solid. Obviously, physically, he's limited. I'm in agreement with you offensively though with him. Like if you utilize him as a screener, if you utilize him on some strong side actions, his gravity is always going to count for something. The Warriors obviously know that he's struggling, but I think the last thing they want is to see Kevin Herter get going because especially after game 4. I think game 4 offensively, I mean, what do you think? Would you say that game 4 was probably their most complete offensive performance, the Kings? I mean, the first 3 games, they really weren't all that great on offense. I think process-wise, the way that they're getting their buckets, how free-flowing everything seemed in the half court. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox just going on a heater helps. But
Right.
offensively, they look pretty good in game 4. And if you add Kevin Herter as regular Kevin Herter or like, pre-February / April, I'm sorry, pre-February / March Kevin Herter into the fold there, I mean, that spells trouble for the Warriors. I don't think they want him to get going, right? So they'll always have to respect his gravity out there.
I think so too. I think the thing for the Kings, and we've said this all year, is that there's like, oh, well, there's never a game where Kevin and Malik are both going on the same night. It's like, I feel that. There's
Mhm.
also never a time, seemingly, that both of them are non existent. And I think that was an issue in game 3.
Yeah.
But it's been fine in the other games. Like Malik had a solid game 1, he had a solid game 2, and he had a solid game 4. Well, up and down game
Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
He had some very good moments.
Oh, yeah.
He had a lot of moments. Some of
Yes.
them were very good, and some of them were very
Absolutely.
bad.
Mhm.
And that's kind of just the Malik Monk experience. But I think if you get one of Monk or Herter going, and you get one of Barnes or Murray going, then you're good. And that
Yes.
also can mean, I think specifically, I think of this more so in Barnes and Murray's cases, that like Barnes, a lot of times, I feel like between the two will have like a good first half and then just be quiet for the second half.
Mhm.
And it's like, that's fine if Keegan Murray is maybe just a little louder in the second half, but he was quieter in the first, or vice versa. But I think if you can get one of Kevin or Malik going and one of HB or Keegan going, then you're good. As long as you still have the production you can count on from De'Aaron and from Domas, which I feel like we've gotten throughout the course of this series. That's going to be a question, obviously,
Yeah.
with De'Aaron at this point. But there's only so much you can do about that. Like, honestly, if De'Aaron is not, if he's extremely limited, the Kings are in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Just kind of reality of it. Do you have any final thoughts on Domas, whether that be like what he's played so far, any ideas moving forward, or any even like overarching thoughts about different feelings about him now that you're seeing a postseason team scheme against him?
Yeah. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, this guy's going to get played off the floor in the playoffs." He's not been that bad. So I think the people who are doomers on Domas probably need to chill out. He's lost a bit of his effectiveness in a way that I really wasn't thinking of because defensively, he's been all right. He obviously hasn't been a just a total complete negative. the Warriors have done, like I said earlier, they've done a really, really good job of just involving him in a lot of stuff. And now that they know that the game plan is for him to show higher, to be at the touch, at the level, even if the ball screens, 28 feet out, because the Kings have essentially forced the Warriors to set them that high, to know that he's going to be up that high, the Warriors, they can counter that pretty easily. He's
And no player in the league is better at attacking like slow-footed bigs, at least relative to their own size than Curry.
right. Exactly. I mean, that's not just the shooting element, right? It's like the guy's got handle, and he's always going to make
his finishing is
it's unbelievable. Like,
LeBron's finish that he had tonight at the end of regulation, right? Where he had this
yeah,
like scoop shot super
yeah,
high off the glass. That's some Curry BS. Like he
yes,
uses so many angles of the glass. The floater, not floater, the like scoop shot.
scoop layup, yeah,
So fucking disrespectful, man.
yeah,
Oh my God. But it's cash. It catches people off guard. His
yep.
finishing is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not that surprising to hear that as a guard, De'Aaron Fox is up at the top of the league when it comes to finishing percentage around the rim. I think some people are always, for some reason, always shocked that Steph Curry is always up there as well. There's a reason why. He's so good at just manipulating angles, being able to use his body. He has such great touch, uses the glass. Sometimes he just throws that thing up there without even using the backboard. It still goes in. Yeah, no, but really, there's nobody out there better at attacking the hip of a big that's slower than him. Than Steph Curry. So they've been able to counter that pretty well. He typically makes the right read. Well, he usually makes the right. The only time I can think of where Steph just completely shit the bed in a situation like that was probably when he called the timeout when the Warriors didn't have one. So, like, other than that, he's been fantastic when they put two on the ball against him. He makes the right decision, and 9 times out of 10, if he's hitting Draymond on a short roll or if he's throwing out of a blitz, Draymond's probably gonna make the right read 4-on-3. He's been doing it all series, with the exception of game 3 in which he didn't play. So
For like half a decade.
yeah, right. So yeah, I think Domas defensively, it's Steph Curry. Like I think overall he's acquitted himself well on the defensive end. He's done really all he can within his limits. Offensively, I'm curious to see if there are any adjustments there whatsoever. And if De'Aaron Fox does not play in the nightmare scenario in which he cannot play, what does Domas do in order to kind of mitigate that, right? Like he needs to step up. He needs to take more shots at that point. Like De'Aaron's been taking, 25-ish attempts from the field through 4 games. Somebody's got to take those shots. Like I would hope that Domas is ready to take more shots, but it depends on what kind of shots he's taking, right? So I guess we'll see. That would probably close out my thoughts when it comes to Domas and kind of wondering how it's going to be if De'Aaron doesn't play.
Yeah. And if De'Aaron's not there, like agreed, Domas needs to step up. After that, you hope that Davion can give you double-digit points, that Malik can have a 20 ball, that maybe TD can pitch in 10. Like there's guys that can get it done. Trey Lyles had a big game 1, right? Like there's guys that can step up, but I think that's like for a game type of thing where they're just on that night. Long term, we're going to have to end up seeing Keegan Murray really came alive last game. I guess I want to start with after the first 3 games when he has 10 points total in 3 games on a combined 3 of, what is this? Attempting to do math that I'm horrible at. 3 of 13 from the field, 10 points through 3 games. And he's playing 15 minutes, 16 minutes, 21 minutes, almost 22. Can't really stay on the floor because of defense, but also I thought that he looked really frazzled by the physicality, which I feel like is something we've seen a handful of times from him throughout the course of this year, which I also think is just a typical rookie thing. And then he totally came alive at game 4. But after game 3, I was at the point where it was like, well, if you don't get anything from Keegan this series, is what it is. Like I had gotten to the point where I just wasn't really expecting anything.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fine. Like long-term projection, I wasn't worried about Keegan. I thought this was just a rookie thing. This was going to be a learning experience. Where were you at? What did you see through those first 3?
Look, the Warriors, again, their defensive scheme. And that's a rookie in the starting lineup that really, and Keegan's not one dimensional, but obviously the majority of his impact on offense is being spaced out, catching and shooting, right? So the Warriors know that. And if you're going to be a 16 game player in the playoffs, meaning, a guy who's going to contribute to 16 wins, you're probably going to have to be more than that. And the Warriors knew that, and they were quick to take that away. They've been very, very good locking and trailing the Kings shooters, specifically Keegan and Kevin. They're there on the catch every single time. They've done some really, really interesting stuff where, during the regular season, you'll see the big kind of, play in like a shallow drop on a DHO, and then Domas sets one of his, brick wall screens, or kind of just uses his body as a shield. And then if you're big, and if you're even 5-6 feet, away from whoever's coming off that DHO, especially if it's Keegan or Kevin, then you're just too late, right? Like, the Warriors did not leave that up to chance. Their plan was, okay, we're going to sag off of Sabonis. That's a given. So any shooter that comes off probably knows that they'll have room to shoot if they're open. The thing is they typically have not been open off of those DHOs, because Gary Payton, Dante DiVincenzo, those guys have been, Kuminga and Moody in game 3. Those guys have been awesome at locking and trailing, being there on the catch, being there on the contest. And the Warriors have also done a good job of, if there's a Kings offensive player on the weak side wing, that defender that's guarding that player on the weak side wing will just pinch down, and they'll come over and they'll contest that shot. They're fine. They're fine with leaving, HB or Davion open on that wing if it means taking away a shot, or getting a hand up at least in the face of Keegan or Kevin. Like they'd rather contest that than give up a wide open shot for those guys, because those guys made a killing off of that type of shot during the season, right? Keegan experienced that for 3 games. Keegan was in hell. Like, that guy could not get going. It was so difficult to watch. And there were a lot of people saying, hey, we should bench him. Mike Brown should take him out. He already wasn't playing all that much, but Mike obviously was never going to bench the kid. He was going to let him kind of grow through it and kind of experience it for himself to see if he could take anything away from it. And I forget who did the interview. I want to say it was Sean Cunningham, or maybe it was, or could have been, or maybe it was you, or maybe it was James. I don't know. You guys kind of all are at the same interviews, so like you guys are all kind of there together. But after game 3, I saw his quote, and I saw the clip where somebody asked him about his confidence, and he said, "Oh, my confidence is fine. I don't lose my confidence just because of a few bad games." And
shocker.
Yeah, right. I mean, you can see it in his face.
No emotion, dude.
Kid's a robot, right? Like, I think all he needed was just a new software update. They got that downloaded and installed.
A new iOS.
Yeah, he got a new firmware, and then he woke up Sunday and he played like a man possessed. I think when that first 3 went down off that kick out from Domas in the post, I'm like, okay, like he could be good for a couple of those tonight. Well, he ended up 5 of 7 from 3. So, and it's one thing if you're hitting wide open spot up threes, dude. He hit like 2 ridiculous ones off of movement, one off of a DHO, one where he used a lift fake to get Clay in the air, took one dribble to the side, hits that one, and then of course he had one where he came off a DHO and off the dribble hit a mid-range jumper, and I'm just like, oh, okay, like Keegan came to play today.
The mid-range jumper and the jab step that shook Clay into the step back 3 to his left was the type of shit that he does, and I'm like, okay, maybe there is a ceiling here.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe I was crazy at the time of the draft. That's the type of stuff. And for him to figure that out in his 4th playoff game, I think is great, because again, I wasn't expecting him, to be honest, to figure it out in this playoff series. Like, I thought if he did, then great, but I don't think that you can rely on that.
Right.
And again, didn't think that was like any issue with long-term production, but for him to have figured out the way that he did, we kind of joke a lot about him not showing much, whether that be good when good or bad things happen. But like, there's a value in that, like he's not too high, he's not too low. It's similar to HB. Like, HB might show a little bit more emotion on the court after big plays and things like that. But I do think there's for sure value that in the, you mentioned like, oh, he's not a one-dimensional player. He kind of can be at
Yeah.
times in his
Oh, yeah.
rookie year.
Oh, yeah.
But that's when the coaching staff has been on his ass about all year about like,
Mhm.
that's why Mike is challenging him to like be a better rebounder earlier in the year. And when he got challenged in that way, he went out and was a really good rebounder right after that,
Yeah.
but it's inconsistent.
Mhm.
Um, and when he got challenged about finishing at the rim, he started to have some moments there where he went up more aggressive, but it's inconsistent. Like that's stuff that will come eventually. Right now, he is pretty one dimensional, but the moments that he had in game 4, I think are extremely, extremely encouraging
Oh, yeah.
for long-term Keegan Murray. This feels crazy to ask right now, but I guess I'm going to. Gun to your head, does Keegan Murray ever make an all-star team?
I would say, yeah, at least one.
Really?
Because look, at Iowa, his March 2022 at Iowa was like insanity. If you just ignore the actual NCAA tournament game that they played in because they got upset by Richmond, he was doing stuff that, I mean, like I knew the guy could fill it up, and like last season for the Kings was just like not fun, and that's how it's been that was how it was for the 16 years prior. I watched a ton of college basketball, so when I hear about this Keegan Murray guy and I see his numbers, I'm just like, dude, what the hell? Like, what that type of production at a Power 5 conference is not normal. So I had to watch more and more of him to make sure that what I was seeing was legit. In February and March, he was just going nuts. Like his Big Ten tournament run, which I think he ended up being he ended up with the record, most points scored in a Big Ten tournament. I think he ended up averaging like 25 a game over the course of 4 games or whatever it was. He was sensational, and he was doing things for Iowa in that Big Ten tournament title run that I'm like, oh yeah, this guy has the ability to be maybe never a true primary, but he could be like a 1B, 1C, right? Like he could be a 2. And the stuff that he flashed on Sunday, specifically that off the dribble jumper that we were just talking about, like it's there. He just needs to do it more, right? And I think part of that, him deferring and not doing that stuff as much is, well, he's playing next to 2 all-stars, two probably all NBA guys this year, right? In De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. He may be stoic and he may not show much emotion, but I also think he's just a really just nice kid and just a really respectful guy. And I think that comes through when it comes to the basketball side of things as well. But it would be hard for me to imagine that going into next season, the coaches, all the other players, especially De'Aaron and Domas, there's no way they won't be on his ass about like, dude, you need to take more shots. You need to be more aggressive. Like, we are not going to kill you if you take more of those off the dribble jumpers, if you do some more of that self-creation stuff, because he's capable of it. And as long as Fox and Domas are out there, and if Kevin's out there and he's shooting the ball well and he's providing spacing and really stretching the floor, Keegan's going to have plenty of room to operate. And the thing that I love about him is that he does play within himself in this offense and on this team as it's currently constructed. But there's a lot more there. And Keegan, in the most boring, probably to a lot of people, boring way possible, and in the most unexciting way possible, averaged like 24 a game at Iowa. There's a reason why he averaged 24 a game at Iowa. And I know that college and the NBA, there's a big gap in between the two, in terms of talent and skill level. But he's shown us things this year where it's like, dude, could you imagine if he just did that 10 or 12 times a game? He probably could average 20 points a game. So I do think that on a very, very successful Kings team, potentially a title contending team, Keegan Murray could probably get on an all-star team. Yeah. Be it by actual coach's vote or by like, I don't know, like injury replacement. I think the possibility's there.
I think it's possible. I agree with your points. I think there's also guys that you see the flashes for, and they never change into consistency. That's one of the main differences I feel like between stars and role players in the NBA is that like any role player honestly could have like 30 on any given night.
Right.
It's just like, what do you do consistently? And I think Keegan has been encouraging. I mean, look at Marvin Bagley, right? Like, I hate to go back to this, but like if you go off flashes, At the end of year one, I still wrote an article about Marvin Bagley about like, sure, he's not Trae Young, he's not Luka Doncic, but he still could be the right pick because this could still work out long term because the flashes were encouraging,
Right.
but they were never anything but flashes.
Mm-hmm.
And Keegan can totally end up proving me wrong. As of now, I will say no to the future All-Star thing. I think it's possible, but if I have to guess, I'm going to say no, which I'm sure people won't be happy with me for. I'll get some Judas comments. But it's also just a way safer odds, to be
Yeah.
fair. I don't think it's a crazy hot take or anything. I think
Yeah.
realistically, like
Yeah.
no is probably the more common answer. But we'll see. Very encouraging. I don't know why I had to take it there and all of a sudden become an asshole because I think he played amazingly in game 4. And it's a question. It's a question, which says a lot about his potential future. If anybody in the live stream chat wants to throw questions our way, now would be the time to do so because it's starting to wrap up. Jrue, I kind of want to open-ended throw it to you and sort of say, like, from this perspective of having gotten Jesus to watch Golden State for 4 games now. What stood out to you with their team? Is there anybody that you feel like has developed as an X factor in this series? Um, is there, the Draymond coming off the bench thing? Like, what has popped out the page to you when it comes to watching Golden State?
I mean, down the stretch in game 4, aside from the Steph time, Steph went full Chris. I feel bad for bringing up his name even when it comes to this because I love Chris Webber. He's one of my goats, but Steph kind of went full Chris Webber. He left the door open for the Kings. Aside from that, the difference in the way that team still ran their stuff, still they were so hyper aware of the moment. They knew when to just pull the ball back out. Hey, let's slow it down. Let's calm it down. Let's run our stuff. To me, that was the difference down the stretch for sure. When it came to just a difference in the two teams, like the difference in experience, obviously on paper, staggering. I mean, it's jarring looking at how much playoff experience that the Warriors have won like 26 or 27 consecutive playoff series against Western Conference teams or whatever it is.
That is a crazy accomplishment, but like it also blows totally past the fact that they lost in the play-in because sure, not
right,
postseason, not
right,
playoffs or whatever, but
mm-hmm.
they lost a play-in game. Every time I
that
hear
is
that
true.
stat, I'm like, they fucking lost a play-in game, just so we know.
That is true. But still a crazy stat. And
Agreed.
and I mean, that chasm in experience between the two teams is just, I mean, that came out like in full force. That those last 5 minutes. I think Malik was so good at being patient in the first half, right? He's running in transition. He's waiting for Alex Len to catch up to him and throws him just a perfect dump off pass for a dunk. A couple possessions later, he runs pick and roll, hits Fox for a wide open 3 on the left wing. And then in the second half, he's just like, all right, I'm going to play with my hair on fire. Like I'm literally going to, I'm going to be out there like a chicken with its head cut off. And just, he made some poor decisions out there. De'Aaron Fox just threw a pass to, it's almost like he couldn't decide who he wanted to pass it to between Harrison Barnes.
There were like 3 people that could have got that pass.
Yeah. They all just looked at each other like,
yeah,
that kind of stuff was, I mean, that'll kill you. So that was one thing that really stood out to me. And I got to shout out the Twitter account NBA University here. If you guys don't follow him, go ahead and give him a follow. He's fantastic follow. He's always dropping nuggets.
agreed.
We talked about Andrew Wiggins before the series and how much he would contribute, right? Or if he would even be a factor. Well, he went 1 of 8 from 3 in game 1 and missed a wide open corner 3 that could have potentially won the game for the Warriors in that game 1. And ever since then, he's like, all right, well, I'm just going to not shoot as much. According to NBA University's tweet right here, Andrew Wiggins has 21 points on 10 of 11 field goals on cuts through 4 playoff games. He is absolutely killing the Kings as a cutter. And if you're back from a roughly 2 month hiatus, and you're rusty and the shot's not there. What better way to get going and what better way to contribute offensively than just by setting screens and just playing off of, your best players on offense and just attacking in an unbalanced or strained defense, right? When Steph Curry comes off of a ball screen and he gets blitzed, if he's able to get that pass out, you're playing 4-on-3 or 3-on-3 or 3-on-2. And Wiggins has done a fantastic job at cutting in from the opposite corner or from the wing and just grabbing a pass, and it's an easy lay-in. He's also done a really good job, really, I think, in that mid-range area. He's the self-creation he shows there every once in a while. I mean, he took plenty of those shots early on in his career. Not the best shot. I think if you're like an analytics diehard, you're maybe ripping your hair out watching him take mid-range jumpers, but he doesn't take as many these days. When he is able to hit those off the dribble threes or off the dribble mid-range jumpers, he's quite effective, and he has been killing the Kings as a cutter, both in the half court and in transition. And I mean, defensively, he's been awesome. I mean, he's
4 blocks,
4 blocks, including that huge one on Davion. If Keegan hadn't cleaned it up,
which, dude, I'd be so pissed if that's me, which would never be me, never
Right.
be me for what it's worth. But I'm like, why the fuck is my team not running back to get that
Seriously?
rebound? Why am I the only one running? I think like 2 Kings and 2 Warriors were all at the same place when the turnover
Yeah.
happened. 2 Warriors jogged, all the Kings players sprinted.
Yeah. If I'm Andrew Wiggins, and also I agree with you there. That would never be me. I would absolutely be pissed. I got a question for you real quick though.
Yeah.
Steph Curry has played heavy minutes this series. He's at around 40, right? The non-Steph minutes have not been good for Golden State, right? This is the last time that we will be getting a 2-day break in between games this series. Game 6, 1 day in between, and then if there is a game 7, 1 day in between. We're going Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, right? Does that loom large with Steph? I mean, do you think that? I mean, he's Steph Curry. We shouldn't. I don't think we should key in on the fact that he's playing a lot of minutes. To kind of think that might be a weakness or that might catch up to him, because he's proven time and again that he's going to be great no matter what. But he is, what is he, 35 now, right? Is that going to possibly catch up to him? Especially with the pace that the Kings are playing at as well.
I don't think so. Like, Kerr said in a presser the other day that he thinks Curry's most underrated skill is his stamina.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to agree that he's ridiculous shape. Mm-hmm. He also said at the beginning of, I think it was between games, either between games 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, that Steph was going to get 10 minutes of rest every night. And that's just reality, which isn't exactly what's happened. What was it? 42, 43 last game.
Yeah.
So probably about half of what you typically want. But if that's what it takes, then it is what it is. I think it's kind of the same thing that we've seen slowly become the case for Domas and De'Aaron, not quite to the same extent, right? But it's like, okay, Alex Len looked fine in game 1. Game 2 is okay, but the Warriors taking that advantage of that in the way that they should. That you should probably stick with Domas more. Same to De'Aaron. To your point, the on-off numbers with Steph are very staggering. On court, Steph. This is. Let me make sure I have these numbers right. Team leading 12.2 net rating, positive net rating in 158 minutes. That's 117 offensive rating and 104.9 defensive rating. Steph off the court, their net rating goes from that 12.2 down to a team worst. Holy shit. My bad. Whoa, this number caught me off guard. Minus 45 in the 34 minutes that Steph has not played. Their offensive rating is an 82.9 compared to 117.1. Whoa, I knew these numbers were crazy, but that's insane.
So their defensive rating is what with him off the floor?
128.1. So their defensive rating is also
there you go.
way worse.
So for those of you guys out there who wonder whether or not offense affects defense, it's essentially, it's a weird analogy I get, or maybe it works appropriately. I don't know. You let me know. People in the chat let me know. But it's kind of like having if you're an NFL team and your offense can't stay on the field, your defense is going to get absolutely, like, you're going to get battered, right? Like, you're going to be so tired because you're out there for so many plays. It almost seems like Steph has that effect, right? Like, he's an elite quarterback in that sense because he keeps the offense going and he is able to generate offense for his team. And then that way his defense can, I'm not saying like take possessions off, but obviously they won't be defending for as long or running for the lives out there because Steph's out there kind of bailing them out with some of this crazy shit that he does. So yeah, that is jarring to hear. That is insane because I think the broadcast these last couple of games has done they've done a good job of illustrating his impact when he's not, like, when he's on the floor versus when he's off, but they basically just use plus minus. To hear the offensive and defensive rating when he's on and off,
below 90s with him off is crazy.
That's insanity.
Yeah.
Kind of important to have him out there.
A little bit, I would say so. Also worth noting, when Domas is on the floor, minus 11.9 net rating. That's 104.7 on offense and 116.6 on defense. When Domas is off the floor, that offensive rating goes from 104.7 to 125.7 and 96 defensive rating compared to 116. It's a plus 29.7 net rating in the 46 minutes Domas does not play, again, compared to a minus 11.9 in the 146 he does play. Worth noting, like, Domas does need to be better. We had that conversation. But Looney matches minutes with Domas. And that's a very big difference in this as well. But they need to be better in the Domas minutes. Like, Domas needs to find they got to figure that out. They've got to be able to figure that out.
You're not giving Alex Len enough credit, though. That's the Alex Len effect. So
I'm shocked, by the way, and it's like one of the most confusing things to me. I see how it's worked, but why was this not tried at all before? Like, coach was very clearly searching and talking about how, like, oh yeah, the backup five, we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's literally the only guy you didn't try. Like, you actually put Neemias Queta in the game to guard Joel Embiid before Alex Len.
Right.
And part of me is like, does off-court stuff with Alex Len
and
home have anything to do with this? Like, I don't know, but I'm glad it's working. Alex Len was damn good. Was it just last year where he was in the first round with Washington as like a starting center? I think he played the least minutes for a starter around the league, but still, anyways.
Yeah, was at least out there playing playoff minutes, and then
yeah,
he's looking like 2020 Alex Len when he was traded to the Kings and was making an impact out there. Like, just the fact that he's 7 feet tall has had such a positive impact on this team defensively. It's been cool to see.
That's the fourth round. That's the fourth overall pick right there. That's exactly who I know. By the way, watching Memphis LA today and seeing like real rim protection in Jaren Jackson Jr. is just a sight to be seen.
Yeah, it is a sight to behold. And by the way, real quick, shout out Jimmy Butler.
Oh my God. Okay, yes. Since you said this, I had this idea earlier in the year that, like, maybe I've thought for a while, okay, they're probably going to eventually, the Kings, that is, take one more swing to add one more guy. It wouldn't surprise me. Like, I think that they were very similar to how Minnesota was last year. Right. And then Minnesota went out and took a swing to add one more
and just broke the trade market.
Fucking whiffed. And everybody knew that they shouldn't have swung at that pitch when it was thrown. Like, everybody, this is not a hindsight thing. That's the craziest thing to me with the Gobert trade. In the moment, everybody was like, what? Like, why? And nobody even like knew what to think of Walker Kessler, really. And that's become its own thing. But I think the Kings could take another swing. For a little while, I was like, I wonder if Jimmy could be that guy. Seems like the right type of guy. You get another creator. The spacing is not great, but you do get a dog defensively. There was a time earlier this year where the coaching staff was talking about, like, maybe we don't have anybody that is kind of on, I'm paraphrasing, but on his teammates' asses when things aren't going well, pretty much. And Jimmy's the definition of that guy.
Oh, yeah.
But when I realized Jimmy is next year when he's 33 right now. Next year, he's starting a 3-year, $146 million contract. I hate to be the guy that has a team-focused pod and then just turns a all-time performance into a conversation about their team.
Yeah.
But, like, is that a guy?
It's Monte McNair loves the word optionality. Not even sure if it's an actual word, but he obviously uses it a lot. Shout out to Monty. And look, he's got his list of guys that he's probably monitoring really, really hard, and he's taking a long look at these guys. It'd be hard to imagine that Jimmy Butler is not on that list, because even though the age, the contract, obviously, those would maybe be hindrances. Dude, that guy, the story of him showing up to practice, whatever it was early on in the season before he got traded.
Nichols?
Yeah. Well, okay. I don't know if we're talking about the same thing. I'm talking about when he was in Minnesota. When he was in Minnesota, and he ran with the third stringers and just beat the shit out of the first and second stringers, and was just yelling profanities at the coaches and the execs in the building and everybody, and just absolutely just like, okay, if I was there and I was on the other side of that, yeah, I probably wouldn't enjoy it. But like as a neutral observer, it's like, wow, this guy's insane. And I love that type of just psychotic energy, because the Kings, yeah, like look, they don't take any shit from anybody. I appreciate it. They stand up for one another. They love playing for one another. But sometimes you just need that guy who's going to make his teammates believe in themselves like nobody else could, and stand up for everybody and hold everybody accountable and just kind of be crazy about it. And that's kind of the guy that's been missing on this Kings team, like personality wise. And Jimmy is, I think today absolutely solidified it. Like, it confirms it for sure. But even before tonight, he's an incredible playoff performer. That man is he is like the most 16 game player that a 16 game player can get in the playoffs. That man brings it every April and May. It's unbelievable how this guy keeps on showing up. And he has willed his team to a 3-1 lead against the top seed in the East. And I mean, they're one win away from eliminating Giannis and the Bucks. Yeah, I know Giannis missed a game or two, right? But still, I mean, roster wise, it's like, whoa, like, there's no way, even with Jimmy Butler and no Giannis, that the series shouldn't at least be tied 2-2. Well, Jimmy Butler drops a 56-point gem in the playoffs, the fourth highest scoring playoff game of all time, and has willed his team to a 3-1 lead. I'm not saying, yeah, definitely go out there and do it, but hey, man, like, it wouldn't hurt to kick the tires. The Kings have some cap space too, right? Like, cap's also going up, new TV deal coming in, new CBA, all that stuff. Like, who knows? Maybe they can maneuver around it. I don't know all that stuff. You'd have to talk to like a cap expert to see how that would work. But I mean, I don't know. Like, why not? Why not? Right?
I love Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I do too.
I have such a soft spot for Jimmy Butler. My best friend forever growing up is just a huge Jimmy Butler fan, and always been. So I've just really have followed Jimmy really closely, and like Minnesota or Chicago is whatever. I still like feel like I have a little bit of like a enjoyment for Minnesota because I followed them when Jimmy was there.
Yeah.
I'm a Miami guy to an extent now because Jimmy's there. Like, I definitely feel like I have some sort of bias of just like, man, I love Jimmy.
I love Jimmy
And
Butler.
I do think they need a dog on this team. Like, Davion is a dog on the floor, but personality wise, the outgoingness, like, to be honest, when Draymond stomps on Domas and, Domas pulls him down, I guess, nobody went up to Draymond.
No.
And that is something that, like, in the moment, I'm not really thinking about, because I'm like, holy shit, did that guy just stomp on him right now? But somebody should probably be going up to Draymond. It's not something that really matters that much long term, but like, I think if you do have that guy, it does help fire up your team. And anyways, didn't need to get on a whole tangent about that.
And look, and just real quick to close out it, if you don't know Jimmy Butler's history, his upbringing, from when he was a child,
you're
go
guaranteed to
look
root
it
for
up.
him.
Yeah, seriously, go look that up, Google it, do whatever you need to do. His story before he even knew he had a chance at the NBA and even a chance at Division I college ball is incredible, and that just makes him so much easier to root for sure.
And for him to have, what is it, 22, 24 in the fourth quarter, and that's not even his highest scoring quarter of the game.
I know.
Like, what are we talking about here? Absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know, beating a 1 seed as the 8 is just absurd. I'm glad that Duncan Robinson remembered how to play basketball.
Yeah, hey, good for him.
Good for him.
Earning that generational wealth, Duncan Robinson.
Absolutely. I don't think that I'm seeing anything else in the chat that stands out to me from anyone. Do you have anything else, Drew?
Somebody
Are you going to be at
Illust,
Game 5?
Illust, real quick. Illust RS bench predictions. Bench players tend to play better at home. We're going to need them to show up Game 5. Hoping for a Trey day. Somebody else also asked if Kevin Huerter is going to show up. I mean, I'm biased to that question. I'm biased. Kevin's my BFF, so yeah, Kevin's going to show up. I've fifth time's the charm is what they say. So I think Kevin's going to show up. God, please show up, Kevin.
Who's the most sleeper bench guy?
It's got to be TD,
right?
For me, it's got to be TD. As far as guys that are kind of in and out, he got a quick look in Game 3, right?
Yeah, I think they tried him.
Yeah, they tried him. He didn't really.
He might have hit it.
Minutes. Did he hit a 3?
Yeah, 1 of 4 from the field, all of them from 3.
Right. He wasn't shy about pulling the trigger out there. Probably TD. Yeah, probably TD. And as far as a guy who's definitely going to come off the bench and get minutes, I mean, can we get Game 1 Trey Lyles back, please? That would be
or Game 1 Malik back.
Or Game 1 Malik. Game 1 or Game 2 Malik. He's pretty good in Game 2 as well, but obviously outstanding in Game 1. Yeah, those two guys, it'd be nice to see them. But dude, when Trey Lyles gives you 16 points like he did in Game 1, I mean, that's worth its weight in gold. He was so important in Game 1. He had some huge shots to kind of weather a couple of big runs by the Warriors and kind of help chip away when they made that huge run at the end of the third. So give me sleeper bench guy, Terrence Davis. Obvious bench guy who will definitely play, who the Kings need something out of, Trey Lyles.
I like it.
Yeah.
I don't really have any others. I'll sleeper throw PJ Dozier in there.
Okay.
And that's just if Davion and Malik aren't cutting it as enough playmaking. I think it's more so if the other guys aren't doing it, then maybe you try it.
Mm-hmm.
And if he has 2 mistakes in 2 minutes, it's a very short leash,
Yeah.
I also am convinced that watching PJ Dozier in warmups that he has one of the prettiest jump shots I've ever seen. And I'm buying way too much into that. But I swear his jumper is so clean.
His numbers, his shooting splits in the G League before the Kings signed him permanently were insane.
He cooked for a little while right before. Dude, I think he had a 40 ball. He was going off.
Yeah. It kind of shows you exactly how good NBA players are, because that is their developmental league that they do send guys back and forth from. And actual fringe NBA players who will be journeymen just show up to that league and just casually can just drop a 40 or 50 burger on anybody's head at any given time and then just leave. That's the G League.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just how it is. And I personally love G League experiences for the days that I randomly run into Grant Riller on the opposing team in Stockton.
Oh,
and I'm oh my God, I loved you at the time of the draft.
Dude.
I don't know what happened.
Man, College of Charleston legend Grant Riller. Yes. I loved him a lot too, but I was a little hesitant in buying too much stock with him because he really was, if he was ever going to be a success, he was only ever going to be one thing, which was just a guy who's just going to fill it up. And I think right now we're seeing, Cam Thomas comes to mind as a guy who just kind of built in the same mold, right? And it's like Cam Thomas will drop 40 points and then we'll have a DMP CD for 5 straight games and come off and drop 35. And if that's the life of a guy that does that type of thing, then, guys who aren't as talented as Cam Thomas obviously will have a very tough time making it to the league. And Grant Riller, certainly qualifies as such, unfortunately.
Agreed. And for what it's worth, anybody that might want to throw it out there, Keon Ellis and Amias Queta are ineligible since they have too many
Ineligible.
contracts,
Yeah.
or else obviously Keon would have already been given Steph fits by now.
Dude, Keon, they would have been editing pictures of Keon locking up Michael Jordan by this point had he been eligible to play. But obviously, the rules stipulate that you can only play 50 NBA games during the season and you cannot play in the playoffs as a two-way player. So unfortunately, Keon Ellis's playoff heroics will be delayed for not just one season. We can wait until next April and May to see that happen, right?
Yeah, I didn't know what Draymond was talking about when he said like the Draymond rules, but maybe that's what he's talking about. It's like they can't play Keon, and that's really the difference here. I don't know.
Could be.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Last question for you, and I think that's the first time I've said it in this episode, but I know
And
you're
mean
I do mean it. I do mean it, unless the chat decides to be assholes and just throws questions like we've been asking. Damn it, Drew. I drew a blank.
Uh-oh.
I haven't drawn a blank in a presser
You lost your train
yet.
of thought.
You make me way more nervous than all these players, man.
Yeah, I get it, dude. I'm a hard work. I'm a blue collar worker. Okay.
And I lost it. Holy shit. What?
Are you kidding me?
No, actually, I'm not. There's a Jimmy clip on my second monitor that caught me off guard for a sec on accident. Damn it.
We're watching Brendan Nunez
fold. Attempt to think.
Because
I'm so annoyed because I really wanted to ask.
This question is it's
it's not a great one, but I just, had one more. I'm so annoyed. I don't want to just give up. There's something about game 5.
Was it the winner going on to win like 82% of
does
series?
the winner of no, and that number's so annoying, but yeah, I get why it's a thing. Does the winner of the Golden State and Sacramento series beat whoever comes out of the Memphis and LA series?
Oh man. Gosh.
I asked that because my answer is yes. I think it's a battle, but if I'm forced to predict.
Yeah, I would say yes. I think the Kings have, if they were to make it out and they face the Grizzlies, look, like as long as Steven Adams isn't playing, all right, give me the Kings in however many games. I don't give a shit. They're probably going to win that series because Steven Adams obviously just owns the Kings as just the entire franchise. And if it's the Lakers, I mean, look, you're going up against LeBron James, Anthony Davis, talking about two generational talents. You're obviously going up against a revamped roster. This is not the roster that you beat three times in the regular season. It will be like a completely just brand new matchup, very much in the same way that this current series is going, because the Kings kind of got their games that actually counted against the Warriors out of the way very, very early before playing that last one late in the season. I do think that they would take the Lakers as well. And then the Warriors, if they face the Grizzlies, I mean, I honestly, the Grizzlies are just so dislikable that it doesn't matter how I feel about Golden State, which I respect Golden State. I don't hate them or anything like that. I'm not annoyed by them or anything like that. As far as their personalities and players and what have you, I would be rooting for them to win. Really, I'd probably root for anybody against the Grizzlies. It's kind of hard. It's kind of tough to admit right now, but like I'm probably rooting for the Lakers to eliminate the Grizzlies just because they annoy me so much. Yeah, I know. But that potentially sets up Kings Lakers, which I want. So, yeah, I think whoever makes that out of the Kings Warrior series will beat whoever comes out of the Lakers Grizzlies series. But I think you're right. It'd be a dogfight. I think that goes 6 or 7, regardless of the opponent. So, yeah. What are you thinking?
Rooting for the Lakers.
Well,
crazy.
Not like rooting. Not rooting for the Lakers. But
you said it. Sources have confirmed.
All right, people are just gonna clip it.
I'm checking with checking with who I know right now.
Yeah,
and seems to be factual.
Yeah, your league source confirms it.
Yep. Yep, that's it. So, final. You asked me, I guess, what I thought. I do think that the winner of Kings Warriors ends up going on. I think that we've seen decent defense from both of those teams. It was something that I picked up that I think everybody was able to pick up on pretty early in this series, that, the Kings aren't atrocious on defense. Like, they're going to be locked in. They're going to be solid there. And I don't know that these other teams can keep up with either one of them offensively. I think that when Memphis is totally rolling, both those teams totally have a chance. I don't think that we're talking like a gentleman's sweep in either one of these. I think we're talking 6-7 games probably. But I think that both these teams got a decent chance. And it'd be pretty poetic if the Kings were able to beat the Warriors and then beat the Lakers.
Yeah.
In back-to-back rounds. That'd be very beautiful.
I'm saying that's you exercise a lot of demons there. So yeah, sorry, Meg. Meg's saying, man, y'all down bad rooting for the Lakers. Look, Meg,
there's no y'all here.
It's just me.
Yeah.
So, although you can group Brendan in. I mean,
no, you can't.
We're both media members, right? Credentialed media members, and you can kind of just group us all into the same.
Yeah. Avid Arby's enjoyers.
Avid Arby's enjoying credentialed media members that are definitely, have been covering this team for a long time and are respected amongst other media members, so it's probably easy for you to kind of group us in together like that. But you were in the middle of asking me a question. Am I going to be at Game 5? Yes, I will be at Game 5. So again, if I'll put out the same offer as I did last time. You see me, you can just walk up to me and just you can sucker punch me if you want, or just walk up to me, say hi, and then punch me. Let me know. We'll meet up. We'll make it happen.
Or just don't even walk up. Just take a picture of him and then try to think of your best roast and post it and at him and me. And if it's solid, I don't even know what, but yeah, I would love it.
Yeah, they get something. I actually have a $10 voucher for food at any concession stand. Alcoholic beverages, you can't use it for alcoholic beverages, but you can use it for food inside Golden One. Best roast gets that, I guess. I don't know, unless I use it on Wednesday, in which case
guaranteed to use it.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna use it, but
All right, anything final in the chat? Gilberto says that he hates it. John and James make fun of me for being young because we're the same age. I feel like they need to be made fun of more for being old.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get a lot of shit for being young, then that means they're old. So
yeah,
I love those guys, but screw them.
It's weird. It's weird whenever they do that stuff, because half the time it's like an even split for me, because I'm a little older than you. Like some of the stuff they refer to, I'm like, oh yeah, I know that. And then some of the stuff they refer to, I have no idea what it is. So I really am in born at a weird time, I guess.
Also, anything that comes to movies and shows doesn't have to do with my age. There's plenty of people my age that know what they're talking about. I just do not know. Doesn't pique my interest at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Brian says their movie suggestions are so bad. I wouldn't know.
Yeah. Basically half the time I wouldn't know either. So yeah, understandable.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate anybody that hopped in here for the live chat. Appreciate you, Jrue, aka that local guy on Twitter. Local,
it's a pleasure,
honor,
absolute privilege every single time you have me on, Brendan. Seriously, this is definitely going to be I'm going to the Kings playoff game on Wednesday, and then if there's a potential Game 7, then that certainly would be the highlight of my week for sure, especially if the Kings win that. So this is going to be the third or fourth coolest thing that's happened to me this week. So it's thank you.
And you were my third or fourth option to get on to, so I think it's fitting. I think that's perfect. Not third or fourth, second. Okay, I don't mean to be disrespectful.
No. Third or fourth sounded cooler though. So you should
it just went with the flow. So, but I appreciate anybody that listened. There is work from myself and all the other great guys and gals that's been ramped up, of course, with the postseason at the Kings Herald. Take a look at their Patreon to support local independent Kings coverage. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Kings Pulse podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. And you hear from me again next couple days.